Hello friends, warm greetings of the day to all of you. I hope you all are basically rocking in your respective lives. Dear guys, today on this amazing economic platform, I would like to welcome you to basically explore the core intricacies of the Indian economy at the best possible level. And as we know, the very main aspect which is responsible for the holistic development of our country is basically women entrepreneurship and women empowerment. And that is the key, the gender equality and also the equal participation of the women in the labor force, hence immensely contributing to the gross domestic product enhancement of the country is actually of vital importance. So, dear friends, today's topic of discussion, as we had a brief overview of this particular topic in last night's session, that is, India's demographic dividend is basically for real, but it needs to be discounted heavily. Now, what does this really mean? The basic gist of this particular phrase is, though our demographic dividend is very strong, it is for real. Yes, it is strong, but are these statistics actually real? Are these statistics revealing the true picture of a demographic dividend? What modifications do we actually require? Dear friends, until and unless there is the equal participation of the males and females towards the enhancement of our overall gross domestic product, till then we cannot say that we are progressing in true terms. So, as very well iterated and articulated by the professor, Miss Neeraj Kaushal, who is basically in the field of social policy at the Columbia University, United States. She has very well articulated the viewpoints that what do we actually need to harness upon? What are the real modifications we actually require in order to ensure the holistic development of the nation? So here it goes. Is India's demographic dividend for real? Let's check it with some international comparisons. In the past decade, India's population increased 160 million, while China's increased by half that much, that is just 80 million. India added almost 2 Germanys to its population, and China added only 1. This is the basic similarity or the basic corollary which we can draw from these statistical facts of the population increase of India and China respectively. Many have argued that the population growth puts India at an advantage. How? Because in that millions born in the last decade will join India's workforce in due course. With that, the economy will receive a daily dividend from the economic contributions of these millions till they retire, which will be many decades later. Ideally, all these equal, India should receive twice the dividend from the last decade's population expansion than China, right? Yes, as per the logical fact, we are quite right. But it is not actually so. India gets a smaller bang for its economy for each additional Indian than does China for each additional Chinese person for basically 2 reasons. That is the labor force participation, which we have just discussed, and the quality of workers. Now first, let's discuss the labor force participation aspect in detail. The share of the population that works in India is actually severely below China's. India has a labor force participation rate of 45% against China's 68%. That is the share of the 15-year-old plus population working or looking for work. which means of the 160 million additional Indians born in the past decade, only 72 million will join the workforce. Whereas in case of China, the population growth of the past decade would yield an additional 54 million Chinese workers. India's advantage drops from 80 million more Indians to just 18 million more workers, that is 1/8. So we really need to ponder upon this topic very heavily. And here the basic reason is the gender equality aspect. That is, certain states of India are lacking in that particular aspect. That is, most of the women are engaged in the household chores, but they should be involved in the workforce participation, in the labor force participation, so that they contribute effectively to the GDP enhancement. Because if they perform the same chores, which would help in generating the income, which will become the economic activity, they would be able to generate much higher contribution towards the country. Now let's discuss another aspect, that is quality of workers, which is responsible for yielding less benefit for the country. The quality is actually very difficult to measure since we can't quantify it properly. One marker commonly used to measure the quality is education. Here, China has a distinct advantage. 15% of the Chinese population has a college degree, while in China, that number is 11%. Given the gap in their labor force participation rates, that is the LFP rates, the numbers with the college degrees that will join the labor force in the two countries would probably not be much different. So these numbers are of course the speculations based on the past statistics. The future may be actually different. India's labor force participation may rise or fall depending all upon the awareness level among the country's citizens. Education levels in the two countries will likely rise, but unless India increases its LFP rate and improves the skills of its workers, it will not be able to reap the demographic dividend we have been waiting for. Here are a few statistics that make the Indian demographic dividend story even more sobering. The labor force participation rates of other East Asian countries are closer to or even higher than China's, that is Vietnam 74%, Thailand 67%, Malaysia 65%. We look lazier when we compare the same to our South Asian neighbors, be it Bangladesh, who has the LFP rate of 57%, Pakistan 50%. Even the rapidly aging rich societies are doing better. Germany's labor force participation is 61% and Japan's 62%. To use the words of Pranab Sen, India's first chief statistician, India's LFP is actually embarrassingly low. Dear friends, we are not basically discouraging our overall setup. We are saying that what all modifications we require towards women empowerment. Though if we draw the comparative analysis from our past, there is still an improvement. But if we draw the comparative analysis with the performance of the rest of the world, we really need to progress quite hard in this particular aspect. So India's LFP is actually not just low, but it is also falling. To a large extent, the reason is low and falling LFP of Indian women. That is the reason which we have been elaborating in our session today. The critics argue that a society like India, where women perform a substantial proportion of household chores that contribute to household well-being, should count women's non-market work as employment and include the value of those contributions to the nation's GDP, that is the gross domestic product. The logic is basically impeccable. For instance, if a woman did the same work in someone else's household, she would get paid and her wages would be counted in computing the national GDP. The argument goes beyond the daily chores like cooking and cleaning. But if you prepare your own taxes, it is not counted in the GDP. If an accountant does it for you, it is. In most cases, however, it is basically difficult to value these activities. If you are a terrible cook or cleaner, or your health is a terrible cook and cleaner, equating the two is a poor approximation. So the question is not just of valuation, but of choice and incentives. In societies where women's participation in paid work is the basic norm, women have the choice to not just work, but choose the jobs most appropriate for their ability. They can invest in skills to seek the jobs they want. Household chores are not a profession. Hence, there is no professional growth. And there is little recognition of the challenging jobs, for instance, taking care of an elderly or of a disabled child, that once successfully done at the workplace would lead to the professional growth and higher salary. There is no pension, no social security, no job mobility. The household chores are limited and so is their output. Greater efficiency in household chores does not increase income, but it rather increases underemployment. So to get back to the basic question, that is India's demographic dividend for real? Yes, it is. But please discount it heavily. Lack of choice and incentives that our social norms impose on the women's work participation severely cut into our ability to reap these dividends. Indian social norms on women's work differ not just from those of other countries, but there is a wide range within the Indian states. Women's labor force participation is actually highest in Himachal Pradesh at 40%, which is worth an inspiration. Lowest in Bihar at less than 3%, which we really need to work upon, guys. We really need to work upon. We may not be ready to adopt the East Asian norms of women's empowerment, but surely the rest of the country can be more like Himachal and encourage and aspire their women to work. So dear guys, this insightful analysis of the Indian economy with regards to the demographic dividend and actually analyzing that are these statistical facts revealing the true picture? What all modifications or what all steps do we need to inculcate in our overall thought process so that the labor force participation for women basically increases? What all work do we require to increase the awareness level among the women of India so that they get motivated to work more and more? Though we are progressing gradually, but we need to basically accelerate the overall pace and the rate at which the metropolitan cities are developing. At the same rate, the other parts of the country like Bihar, Rajasthan, they should also, the remote areas of Bihar and Rajasthan, they should also try to inculcate the same concept in their lives, in their overall thought processes. Everyone knows what is right and what is wrong, but the basic step of implementation is where where we need to work upon. So now, dear guys, let's discuss on in this context. Let's discuss the inspirational biography of the woman entrepreneur from India. Now, here it begins. That is, dear guys, as we can see in front of us, Dr. Pratibha Patil, who was the first woman president of India. Now we are being led by Miss Draupadi Murmu, and she is such an inspirational figure for us, such an inspirational pioneer leader, I would like to say. Now we also have Dr. Kiran Bedi. She is worth an inspiration, and many other fields, many other aspects. There is a gradual development wherein we can see that the women have created miracles. But the only need of the hour is to fasten this process. Now, on this note, we are going to discuss the biography of the great Indian women leader, as we have just said, and we are going to discuss the biography of Dr. Kiran Bedi. Dear guys, Dr. Kiran Bedi is the successful social activist leader, and she is 73 years old, and she has and her contribution to the Indian economy has been quite immense. She is a very active woman leader, and she has created miracles in her entire life. She is an Indian social activist born on 9th June 1949, the former tennis player who became the first woman in India to join the officer ranks of the Indian Police Services in 1972, and was the 24th Lieutenant Governor of Pondicherry from 28th May 2016 to 16th February 2021. She remained in service for 35 years before taking the voluntary retirement in 2007 as the Director General, Bureau of Police Research and Development. As a teenager, Dr. Bedi was crowned the National Junior Tennis Champion in 1966. Between 1965 and 1978, she won several titles at various national and state level championships. After joining the IPS, Dr. Bedi served in Delhi, Goa, Chandigarh, and Mizoram. She started her career as an Assistant Superintendent of Police, that is ASP, in the Chanakyapuri area of Delhi, and won the President's Police Medal in 1979. Next, she moved to West Delhi, where she brought about a reduction in crimes against women. Subsequently, as a traffic police officer, she oversaw the traffic arrangements for the 1982 Asian Games in Delhi and the Commonwealth Heads of the Government Meetings 1983 in Goa. As the Deputy Commissioner of Police of North Delhi, she launched a campaign against the drug abuse, which evolved into the Navjyoti Delhi Police Foundation, renamed to Navjyoti India Foundation in 2007. In May 1993, Dr. Bedi was posted to the Delhi prisons as Inspector General. She introduced several reforms at Tihar jail, which won her the Raymond Magsaysay Award in 1994. In 2003, Dr. Bedi became the first Indian and first woman to be appointed head of the United Nations Police and the police advisor in the United Nations Department of Peace Operations. She resigned in 2007 to focus on the social activism and writing. She runs the India Vision Foundation. During 2008 to 2011 duration, she hosted a court show, Aapki Kacheri. She was one of the key leaders of the 2011 Indian anti-corruption movement and joined the Bharatiya Janata Party in January 2015. She unsuccessfully contested the 2015 Delhi Assembly elections as the party's chief ministerial candidate.